The British sure do have a way with words. Some would say they invented the English language. Others would say they've gone too far in trying to make it so fanciful and delightful. Today's video topic, driving words that if you use in the UK, you'll be understood, but in the US, people will be looking at you like you're driving them crazy. Let's pop it into another gear. The first word on our list, flyover. Now, if you're an American, you're like, oh yes, the part where you're coming up towards the airport, the flyover, the word for slip road? No. Flyover is the British word for an overpass, an underpass, that type of thing. Ours in the US, you go over, you go under, you pass. It makes a lot of sense. British people, they fly in their little airplanes, little jalopies going, whew. Now, I used this word a lot, actually, before realizing it had an American equivalent. And that's because I thought it was a very specific word for a very specific place. When I lived in Chiswick, I lived down the road from the famous Chiswick flyover. They had signs all over the place, come visit the flyover. And I thought, wow, this must have some sort of relevance in today's modern London society. Not really. It's just an overpass that a famous person visited once, and now there's a plaque. British culture.
It's a sweet little flyover. Wow, what a review from Jane Mansfield, 1959. If you're unaware, Jane Mansfield is essentially a huge sex symbol from the 1950s and 60s from America, and Playboy bunny. And she was flown out here, or you could say, I guess Chiswick had her fly over, just to announce the opening of this very flyover. British culture sure is strange, isn't it? But as another fun fact about this one, the Chiswick flyover at one point in time, for actually a few decades, was known as the most dangerous road in all of Britain. I know so much history about this friggin' area.
More flyovers, please. And more girls like Jane to open them.
Now, if you watched my video uploaded a couple weeks ago about the metric system, you'll know that I haven't driven a lot in the UK, and so a lot of these driving words haven't really stuck, as opposed to the other words in my life like bin and such that I uploaded in a video a couple weeks ago as well. The next word, though, might confuse a bit of you, okay? So when you're driving and you've gotta pull up that little brake thing to make sure you don't roll down a hill, it's called an emergency brake in the States, okay? I'll just throw that out there. It's used for emergencies. In the UK, it does make sense. Your hand puts up the brake, the handbrake. Okay, that is one that Americans will totally understand, but I feel like most Americans are gonna call it an emergency brake. Over here, I feel like that thing is just used for everything. You pull up that handbrake. I was always taught, put up the handbrake if you're on a hill. Otherwise, you're probably fine unless you're in an emergency, then use your emergency brake. But there you go. Americans, back me up here. I feel like it's a word that Americans will understand what you mean if you say handbrake, but most people I know would call it an emergency brake. Emergency situations. And as much as I will be making fun of some different UK words throughout this video, the next one I'm gonna give some concessions to, because it does make sense. When you have a car and you have to have a plate on the front or back of it to show what the car is, whose it is, and or the police can look it up, in the UK it's called a number plate. A plate that does have numbers on it, though there are letters as well, so hypothetically it should be a number and letter plate, but it's just called a license plate in the States. It has no relevance to our actual license number, but I've grown up saying license plate, and I still say license plate. When I hear number plate, it just sounds a bit more fun. Oh no, you've just swerved off the road. Now this next word confused me so much when I found out about it because I've never heard a single British person say this, but I wanted to make sure it was real. I called 3 or 4 friends and sure enough, oh yeah, that's what I'd use. Okay, so if a car swerves off of the road, maybe just very lightly, you could say, he careered. Career? Wait, we've already got a word for that. We have a word, the word career, when you've got a job and your job path, your career, that's a noun. However, in the UK, career is also a verb for when you're actually going off of the road. The US equivalent is careen. The car careened off the road. The truck careened off the road. Here, I guess if you had a job of making sure that cars were staying on the road and so you had to drive them off to see how much they could handle, well, your career would be careering. Which is just so weird. I just can't imagine someone saying the car careered. I'm like, oh, how much did it get paid? It sounds close enough to careen that maybe Americans would know just by hearing if you said that, but it's just a weird one. Now this next one's quite contentious, but hear me out. I know Brits like to bully Americans for referring to the path on the side of the road that you walk on as the sidewalk. Because you walk on the sidewalk. In the UK, the equivalent is pavement. But now that I've lived here for 10 years, I actually use each word for different things. Let me explain. So when I hear the word sidewalk, I actually only think of the very classic American suburb sidewalk, which is white square blocks of concrete that lead down a path. That's a sidewalk. The UK, the word pavement is pretty much this just the crumbling infrastructure of where you can walk on the side of a road. And there's usually like tree roots breaking it up, but that is paved, I guess you could say. In the US, the word pavement means pretty much anything that's paved. So a road, that's pavement. If the sidewalk is paved as well, then that's pavement. Everything that is paved is pavement. That's how it works. However, we also have extra distinctions because we love our roads. And so as a kid, you'd play out on the asphalt, which is the standard, black road, or if the development has just invested, they've gotten some really nice, black, smooth blacktop. Oh boy, that's where you want to go skateboarding, riding your bicycle, bouncing your basketball. The blacktop is the best type of pavement in the States. Not really seen over here as often. That being said, I do use sidewalk and pavement interchangeably, but as much as I try and say the word sidewalk to be understood over here, sometimes I do try and mask that I'm from America when I'm having very short conversations and I don't feel like getting into the where are you from conversation. So the other day when I went to the Maidenhead Museum and I was just having a basic conversation and I was talking a bit like this, so that way he's got a bit of a weird accent. I don't really know where he's from, but whatever. I'm signing the guest book and having a little conversation and I said, oh yeah, I saw that on the sidewalk. And the woman went, oh. So where are you actually from? Cover blown. Hearing the word sidewalk in a British accent, it's a weird thing. I know, I'm sorry. Lo siento. Now, despite the fact that the UK has a way better public transit system than the US could ever hope for, and we have so many trains over here, the UK is missing out on one of the best words ever that refers to a part of a train. The caboose. Come on now, it's such a fun sounding word. If you've never said the word caboose, say it, caboose. Caboose. I really hope you've joined in because it just sounds so nice. It's a good word. It's the final carriage on a train. It has a very distinct look. This is the look of a caboose. There he is. The UK equivalent supposedly is guard's van. I don't know, man. Doesn't sound fun. Caboose. Caboose you can also use in other ways. In US culture, you can also refer to a good butt as a nice looking caboose. Man, that chick's got a caboose. Oh, because it's her rear end. Come on, guys. I'm just saying it's a good word. Guard's van doesn't quite hit as much as a good caboose. Here's where some British words get just a little bit silly. So much so that if you tried to tell an American that these are real British words, they would think you were pulling their leg. That, of course, is a lollipop person. Come on. I genuinely didn't believe this was real when I first heard someone say it. I thought they were just taking the piss. The person that helps the children cross the street and they hold the little sign that says stop, that I guess you guys over here are just going, I could go for a lolly right now. A lollipop person. It's very fanciful. It's very cute. I will give you that. In the US, we would just call them a crossing guard because they're guarding the crossing. But to make matters even more funny, if we're saying that you have a lollipop person protecting the kids crossing the street, well, you'd also say the lollipop person at the zebra crossing over here. I'm sorry, I see no zebras, I see no lollipops. What is going on? That is a crosswalk, and I do still use the word crosswalk. Sometimes I say zebra crossing because that's not the way it's pronounced over here. No one would say zebra crossing, and I think it sounds fun. But the sentence of a lollipop person helping at the zebra crossing sounds like something from Dr. Seuss. Now, as an added expression, if you ask someone in the US, do you know how to drive stick? You're asking them if they know how to drive a manual car, because we refer to a manual car as a stick shift. And it's more of a hobbyist thing. You really want to get a manual car. It's like, ooh, you got a stick shift? That's pretty cool. In the UK, if you ask someone, do you know how to drive a manual? That's the same thing as saying, do you know how to drive? Brits are very, very proud of their ability to drive cars that were built in the 1900s. Very, very proud indeed. And so if you try and get an automatic only license, which is a thing over here, you mostly get bullied because everyone over here is very proud of the fact that they spend less money to buy a cheaper car, that they have to constantly move their left foot around a clutch, change gears as if, yet again, they're driving a Model T. But it is part of the culture here and to be expected. I'm surprised that Brits got so on board with the electric kettle because of their strong proclivity to using the manual car. It makes me believe, well, if you really want to have tea, you have to make a fire yourself and boil it over an open fire. That's the only way to do it. Gotta get your flint out and whatnot. I'm sorry, it's cheaper this way. Flint's much cheaper than electricity. It's a bad analogy, I know. I just found out this week that in the North they refer to a cup of tea as a brew, and I think that's lovely. But we've got a couple more words brewing up today. Next up, if you are a car and you come to an intersection, and for some reason you're sentient because you're a car, well, that would be called a traffic light in the UK. And of all the words in this list, that one actually makes the most sense. It's a traffic light. But yet, growing up in the States, I'm gonna call it a stoplight. Americans will know what you mean if you say traffic light, but it'll definitely pin you as someone that's not from here and, oh, that's quite interesting. Traffic does go there. And if anything, in the US, we should call it a stop and go light, depending on what the color of the light is. But depending on the color of the light, that That's actually also different. You'd be surprised within the US and the UK. In the US, it's one of those things you learn in elementary school. The primary colors, red, yellow, and blue, and green is yellow and blue together. I mean, the pixels on the screen that you're watching this video on are red, yellow, and green, just like a stoplight, right? No. In the UK, a traffic light is red, okay, green, standard, and amber. An amber light. Oh, so fancy. Why the yellow is fancier? Why is that amber? Why is it amber? I do not know. If anything, it would make more sense to say the ruby, the amber, and the emerald light, if you want to go all fancy. But for some reason, it's just basic color, fancy gemstone. Never understood that. Never understood that. Now, if you drive any car except a BMW, you might be aware that on the side of your steering wheel is a lever that will help you tell people you are going to be taking a turn soon. In the US, that is a turn signal. In the UK, sounds much more fancy, like you're in Harry Potter and you're going, indicator! It's your indicator, because you're indicating. It makes sense, it's fun. I'm still gonna call it a turn signal, but it does sound nice. Now, to add some confusion here, depending on where you're from the States, your turn signal can be referred to as your blinker. Except the blinkers can also be referred to in the States as your emergency lights, which are called the hazard lights in the UK. That's something you'll be understood with saying. Hazard, emergency, very similar. Floodlights, high beams, all pretty much the same. But the final word on our list today that you probably are unaware that Americans have a different word for is roundabout. Roundabout is a perfect word. I wouldn't change it. The word itself makes you feel like you're going around a roundabout. Roundabout. You don't even need to know what it means. You know what it means from the way it sounds. The US equivalent, now we do not have many roundabouts in the States, but when we do, we look at it and go, that right there, that's a circle. It's a circle. I lived down the road from a circle once, and that because there's so few of these things, we refer to it as, oh, the circle. He's near the 77 circle. Oh. Yeah, so if you're wondering if you say the word roundabout in the US, will you be understood? The word itself lends to being understood, but probably use the word circle. And that's a roundabout way of saying I hope you've enjoyed this video. And if you did, I did make a video on British words I now use every day in my American British vernacular, so go watch that if you haven't yet. In the meantime, I'd like to thank today's video sponsor while switching between microphones, so please tell me which microphone you actually prefer for this ad read. Let's go. So NordVPN have graciously sponsored this video. Thank you to NordVPN. If you're unaware, a VPN, a virtual private network, is an easy way to change browsing location. So sometimes when I'm researching certain videos, I want to look up websites from the States, but certain websites go, sorry, sir, you have GDPR, not allowed to access. With a click of a button, I'm now in the US. Haha, now I can see. Your site wasn't worth visiting, was it? No. And there have been times in which I've wanted to watch a TV show and didn't want to, do it the old piratey way, and guess what? It was available on US libraries. So all I have to do is change my location with NordVPN, and bam, now I have access to all of the Netflix library in the States. And with a 30-day money-back guarantee, you can make sure getting NordVPN is a good decision for you. If you like the idea, sign up to nordvpn.com/Evan and get a huge discount on a 2-year plan and support the channel. So thank you to NordVPN for sponsoring, and please tell me which microphone you preferred. I actually do not know until I put this in post. We shall see. Anyway, I hope you've been enjoying your summer so far. I've been working really hard on some big videos in the pipeline that are coming soon, so thank you very much for your patience as I upload some fun stuff while you wait. Hope to see you next Sunday. Goodbye.